Today, we're going to dive into a story from the ancient world that feels, well, surprisingly modern. It's all about power, belief, and what happens when a spiritual shift completely upends the city's economy. We're heading to Ephesus, a place where the supernatural was quite literally big business, and we're going to see what happens when two worlds collide.
And this question, right here, is really what it all boils down to. In a world that's just overflowing with competing spiritual claims, how do you even begin to tell the difference between what's real and what's just a really good copy? The people of Ephesus are about to find out, and it's not going to be easy.
So to really get what's about to unfold, you first have to picture the scene. Ephesus wasn't just any old port town. No, it was a major hub for the Roman Empire in Asia, a place just buzzing with commerce, new ideas, and this really intense spiritual energy.
And this quote, it just nails the atmosphere. Ephesus was pretty much the capital city of the occult. It was a place where faith, superstition, and money all got tangled up together in this very public and very profitable marketplace. People would travel from all over looking for power, for protection, or maybe just a little glimpse into their own future.
You know, the basic operating system for this whole spiritual scene was an idea called syncretism. Magicians kind of worked like collectors. They believed the more sacred names they knew, the more power they could wield. So they'd gather up names and incantations from all these different religions, Jewish, Egyptian, Persian, you name it, hoping that if they mixed them just right, they'd stumble upon something that was actually real.
So why was there such a huge market for this stuff? Well, you have to understand, for a lot of people back then, the world felt like a pretty dark and dangerous place. They imagined the universe was just teeming with spirits and invisible forces, and not all of them were friendly. Magic wasn't entertainment. It was a serious tool they used to try and get a little bit of control, to keep their families safe and to push back against all the dangers they felt were closing in.
So, into this chaotic, spiritually supercharged city comes this new and frankly disruptive force. His name is the Apostle Paul, and he brings with him a kind of power that nobody in Ephesus was really prepared for.
The way it's described is so interesting. The text says the miracles were not of the ordinary kind. Now just think about that for a second. In Ephesus, a city that was absolutely swimming in claims of supernatural power, what was happening through Paul was so different, so potent, that it actually stood out from all the background noise.
And here's where we see the fundamental difference between the two. Ephesian magic was all about people trying to control the supernatural using secret formulas and rituals. The whole point was to bend the world to your will. But the apostolic miracles were presented as the complete opposite. The goal wasn't control, it was healing and freedom. And it didn't come from some secret technique, but from faith in a single, sovereign God who couldn't be controlled. And get this, the way this power showed up was in a form the Ephesians could totally understand. See, in a culture that was used to physical charms and amulets, this power was being transmitted through everyday objects. Literally, the sweaty work aprons of a tentmaker. It was sending a huge message. Real power isn't found in some expensive secret scroll. It can flow through the most ordinary things, available to anyone.
Well, you know what happens when there's a new, powerful force on the scene, right? It's only a matter of time before someone tries to copy it, to add it to their own bag of tricks. And that leads us right to the story's big confrontation.
And sure enough, along come these guys, the 7 sons of Sceva. They were traveling exorcists, and when they saw what Paul was doing, they thought, hey, we found a powerful new tool for the trade. For them, the name Jesus wasn't about a relationship or a conviction. It was just another powerful word, a new piece of spiritual tech to add to their collection.
So they try out their new formula, and the response they get is, well, it's just chilling and totally humiliating. The evil spirit's answer gets right to the heart of our question. It acknowledges the genuine authority of Jesus, and it even recognizes the delegated authority of Paul. But these 7 guys, it basically says, I have no idea who you are. They had the right words, but they had zero connection to the source. They were just imitating.
And you can imagine, word of this absolute disaster just spread like wildfire through the city. The public failure of these guys sent a shockwave through Ephesus, and it made everybody stop and rethink what they thought they knew about real power. The result was immediate, and it was dramatic. The city's reaction was just huge, and you could measure it with a single, pretty staggering number, 50,000. But 50,000 what?
50,000 drachmas. A drachma was a silver coin, and it was pretty much the standard wage for a full day of work for an average laborer. And that was the estimated value of all the magic scrolls and books that people started to bring out into the middle of the city.
Let that just sink in for a minute. That is the equivalent of 137 years of salary for one person. A lifetime of work, more than a lifetime really, and they voluntarily threw it all into a massive bonfire. This was not some small symbolic act. This was a really costly, deeply personal, and very, very public turning away from their old beliefs.
But a bonfire that big? That's not the end of the story. Not by a long shot. A cultural earthquake of this size was bound to have some serious real-world consequences, especially in a city whose economy was so wrapped up in its religion.
See, the people whose entire livelihood depended on that old system, well, they started to panic. The silversmiths in Ephesus made a good living crafting these little silver shrines of the goddess Artemis. But now, with thousands of people burning their magic books and turning to a new faith, the market for those idols was drying up. Their fear wasn't just about religion. It was about their jobs, their income, their whole way of life.
So you can see the dominoes just falling, one after another. It all starts with a spiritual experience, right? Something you can't even see, but that event changes what people believe deep down. That change in belief then hits the local economy, and a major industry starts to crumble. And finally, that economic fear just explodes into social chaos, a full-on riot in the streets.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway from what happened in Ephesus. What people believe is never just a private, internal thing. Beliefs shape our culture. They drive our economies. They can build up or tear down entire social structures. The story of Ephesus is just clear as day proof that when people's hearts and minds change, the real, tangible world changes right along with them.
So this story, from thousands of years ago, it leaves us with a question that feels like it could have been written yesterday. We live in our own kind of marketplace of ideas, don't we? With so many voices all competing for our belief, for our attention, and what the story of Ephesus seems to suggest is that the difference between the real thing and the imitation isn't just about using the right words, it's about having the power to actually transform lives, cultures, and even economies. And that's definitely something to think about.